Today is Sunday, January 5th. It is 1:33 in the afternoon. Day 24 of my 30-day Improve My Voice project. This is day 2 of week 4. Yesterday, I switched to reading from an actual book. I chose for my reading practices for this 4th week, I will be reading from Agatha Christie's novel, The Man in the Brown Suit, via my Kindle. Actually, I need to back my Kindle up to the beginning of the prologue. I listened to myself yesterday after I read it. And then I listened to the audiobook version of it that I have via Audible, so I could listen to a professional audiobook narrator deliver it. And I think the biggest thing the two main things that I noticed. My delivery is uncertain. Not a big surprise on that, right? I think confidence is something that I'm going to develop with practice, which is why I'm doing this project. Breath control was the other thing that I noticed. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to work hard on the breath control. I just every 3 seconds, every 5 words, I had another breath that I was taking. I'm just putting the focus on so that I don't get interrupted. So enunciation was pretty good. Clarity was pretty good. Breath control and just the confidence of the delivery, both of which just take practice and time. So I wasn't displeased with it, but I could definitely make note of areas to try and work on for this time around. I'm still recording with the Bi-Fei Li C414 through my Focusrite Scarlett Solo. Still not loving the Scarlett Solo. I almost switched back to the Zoom H6 Essential today. But I didn't want to deal with the hassle of trying to go in and switch it from stereo to mono. I just wanted to dive right into it. The reading of the prologue takes a lot longer than the reading of the first 2 paragraphs of Suzanne Palmer's short story, Don't Mind Me. It takes about 10-11 minutes to read it. So to sort of speed things up a bit, I did not video record all of the a lot of the warm-ups that I do. So we are going to pick up today's video with QEQR and move into the tongue twisters and then move into the reading. And hopefully that will keep this this video recording at around 30 minutes, hopefully. But, the deep diaphragm breathing, the neck and shoulder rolls, the facial massage with the gum chews, the fake yawning, those are all silent, so there's really no reason for me to be capturing them on an audio and video recording. The resonant humming, interesting. I don't gain anything from listening back to it. The same thing with the lip trills and the tongue trills and the ya exercises. So and the tongue strengthening exercises, silent, right? I'm not benefiting from doing a video or an auditory review of them. So I did all of those today. I just didn't record them here in this video. Okay, we'll move right into the QEQRs. Yeah, okay, here we go. Q, E, Q, R, 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 Q, E, Q, R. And as I'm doing this, I'm watching my sound levels in Adobe Audition, and I'm just trying to tweak the gain on this Focusrite just to try and get the levels to where I want them to be. And my God, it is like picometers of adjustments make big differences. But right now I've got the gain cranked way up. Okay, anyway. Q, E, Q, R, 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 Q, E, Q, R. All right, I think I've got the gain set up pretty good to where I want it to be. All right, tongue twisters. Here we go. To work on my D sounds. Down the deep, damp, dark, dank den. Down the deep, dank, 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 dark, dank den. How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? I'm also trying to use this as an opportunity to control my breathing. All right. To work on my F sounds. Four furious friends fought for the phone. 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 Oh, I got it 7 times on one breath. Okay. To work on my J sounds. James just jostled Jean gently. 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 10. I did it 10 times. Okay. To work on my S sounds. Ugh. Excuse me. I am a person who is unable to burp, like the normal burping that you think of. And instead, I make these weird, like, little esophageal gurgles that I have grown up calling greps. I don't know if anybody else calls them greps, but they're very odd sounds. Anyway, I can feel another one coming. I'll tell you, they're hard to get up and out because I can't burp. All right. To work on my S sounds. Moses supposes his toeses are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toeses are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toeses to be. Moses supposes his toeses are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toeses are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toeses to be. Let's see if I can get 2 in one breath. Moses supposes his toeses are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toeses are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toeses to be. Moses supposes his toeses are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toesies are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toeses to be. Technically I got 2 in, but I don't think that last one really counts. My least favorite one. To work on my R sounds with the coarse cross cow. If you must cross a coarse-crossed cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the cross-course cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. If you must cross a coarse-crossed cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the cross-course cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. If you must cross a coarse-crossed cow across a If you must cross a coarse-crossed cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the coarse-crossed cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. I hate that one. Do not like that tongue twister. So let's move on. To improve differentiation between different sounding words. I do like this one. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better. So Betty bought a better bit of butter. Oh, excuse me. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better. So Betty bought a better bit of butter. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better. So Betty bought a better bit of butter. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better. So Betty bought a better bit of butter. 2. I did 2 in one breath. Okay. So, we are going to retry reading the prologue. All right. And I do practice cleaning this up in post. Right now I'm using Adobe Audition, but I don't love the subscription model that they've got, so I just today actually downloaded Pro Tools Intro, I think is what it's called. My goodness, overwhelming. The learning curve, practically vertical. I'm going to have to watch a lot of YouTube tutorial videos on this one. Let's get that where it needs to be. Oh, there was the grubs. Okay. The Man in the Brown Suit by Agatha Christie. Prologue. Nadina, the Russian dancer who had taken Paris by storm, swayed to the sound of the applause, bowed and bowed again. Her narrow black eyes narrowed themselves still more, the long line of her scarlet mouth curved faintly upwards. Enthusiastic Frenchmen continued to beat the ground appreciatively as the curtain fell with a swish, hiding the reds and blues and magentas of the bizarre decor. In a swirl of blue and orange draperies, the dancer left the stage. A bearded gentleman received her enthusiastically in his arms. It was the manager. Magnificent, petite, magnificent, he cried. Tonight you have surpassed yourself. He kissed her gallantly on both cheeks in a somewhat matter-of-fact manner. Madame Nadina accepted the tribute with the ease of long habit and passed on to her dressing-room, where bouquets were heaped carelessly everywhere, marvelous garments of futuristic design hung on the pegs, and the air was hot and sweet with the scent of the massed blossoms, and with the more sophisticated perfumes and essences. Jean, the dresser, ministered to her mistress, talking incessantly, and pouring out a stream of fulsome compliments. A knock at the door interrupted the flow. Jean went to answer it, and returned with a card in her hand. Madame will receive? Let me see. The dancer stretched out a languid hand, but at the sight of the name on the card, Count Sergius Pavlovitch, a sudden flicker of interest came into her eyes. I will see him. The maize peignoir, Jean, and quickly. And when the count comes, you may go. Bien, madame. Jean brought the peignoir, an exquisite wisp of corn-colored chiffon and ermine. Nadina slipped into it, and sat smiling to herself, whilst one long white hand beat a slow tattoo. Nadina slipped into it, and sat smiling to herself, whilst one long white hand beat the slow tattoo on the glass of the dressing-table. The Count was prompt to avail himself of the privilege accorded to him. A man of medium height, very slim, very elegant, very pale, extraordinarily weary. In feature, little to take hold of, a man difficult to recognize again if one left his mannerisms out of account. He bowed over the dancer's hand with exaggerated courtliness. Madame, this is a pleasure indeed. So much Jean heard before she went out, closing the door behind her. Alone with her visitor, a subtle change came over Nadina's smile. Compatriots though we are, we will not speak Russian, I think, she observed. Since we neither of us know a word of the language, it might be as well, agreed her guest. By common consent, they dropped into English, and nobody, now that the Count's mannerisms had dropped from him, could doubt that it was his native language. He had, indeed, started life as a quick-change music-hall artist in London. You had great success tonight, he remarked. I congratulate you. All the same, said the woman, I am disturbed. My position is not what it was. The suspicions aroused during the war have never died down. I am continually watched and spied upon. But no charge of espionage was ever brought against you. Our chief lays his plans too carefully for that. Long life to the colonel, said the Count, smiling. Amazing news, is it not, that he means to retire? To retire? Just like a doctor, or a butcher, or a plumber. Or any other businessman, finished Nadina. It should not surprise us. That is what the colonel has always been, an excellent man of business. He has organized crime as another man might organize a boot factory. Without committing himself, he has planned and directed a series of stupendous coups, embracing every branch of what we might call his profession. Jewel robberies, forgery, espionage, the latter very profitable in wartime, sabotage, discreet assassination. There is hardly anything he has not touched. Wisest of all, he knows when to stop. The game begins to be dangerous. He retires gracefully, with an enormous fortune. Said the Count doubtfully. It is rather upsetting for all of us. We are at a loose end, as it were. But we are being paid off on a most generous scale. Some undercurrent of mockery in her tone made the man look at her sharply. She was smiling to herself, and the quality of her smile aroused his curiosity, but he proceeded diplomatically. Yes, the colonel has always been a great paymaster. I attribute much of his success to that, and to his invariable plan of providing a suitable scapegoat. A great brain, undoubtedly a great brain, and an apostle to the maxim, if you want a thing done safely, do not do it yourself. Here we are, every one of us, incriminated up to the hilt, and absolutely nothing. Here are we, every one of us, incriminated up to the hilt, and absolutely in his power, and not one of us has anything on him. He paused, almost as though he were expecting her to disagree with him, but she remained silent, smiling to herself as before. Not one of us, he mused. Still, you know, he is superstitious, the old man. Years ago, I believe, he went to one of those fortune-telling people. She prophesied a lifetime of success, but declared that his downfall would be brought about through a woman. He had interested her now. She looked up eagerly. That is strange, very strange. Through a woman, you say? He smiled and shrugged his shoulders. Doubtless, now that he has retired, he will marry. Some young society beauty who will disperse his millions faster than he acquired them. Nadina shook her head. No, that is not the way of it. Listen, my friend, tomorrow I go to London. But your contract here? I shall be away only one night, and I go incognito, like royalty. No one will ever know that I have left France. And why do you think that I go? Hardly for pleasure at this time of year. January is a detestable, foggy month. It must be for profit, eh? Exactly. She rose and stood in front of him, every graceful line of her arrogant with pride. You said just now that none of us had anything on the chief. You were wrong. I have. I, a woman, have had the wit, and yes, the courage, for it needs courage, to double-cross him. You remember the De Beer diamonds? Yes, I remember. At Kimberley, just before the war broke out? I had nothing to do with it, and I never heard the details. The case was hushed up for some reason, was it not? A fine haul, too. 100,000 pounds worth of stones. 2 of us worked it, under the colonel's orders, of course, and it was then that I saw my chance. You see, the plan was to submit some of the De Beer diamonds for some sample diamonds brought from South America by 2 young prospectors who happened to be in Kimberley at the time. Suspicion was then bound to fall on them. Very clever, interpolated the Count approvingly. The colonel is always clever. Well, I did my part, but I also did one thing which the colonel had not foreseen. I kept some of the South American stones. 1 or 2 are unique, and could easily be proved never to have passed through De Beer's hands. With these diamonds in my possession, I have the whip hand of my esteemed chief. Once the 2 young men are cleared, his part in the matter is bound to be suspected. I have said nothing all these years. I have been content to know that I had this weapon in reserve, but now matters are different. I want my price, and it will be big. I might almost say a staggering price. Extraordinary, said the Count. And doubtless you carry these diamonds about with you everywhere? His eyes roamed gently around the disordered room. Nadina laughed softly. You need to suppose nothing of the sort. I am not a fool. The diamonds are in a safe place, when no one will dream of looking for them.
I never thought you a fool, my dear lady, but may I venture to suggest that you are somewhat foolhardy? The colonel is not the type of man to take kindly to being blackmailed, you know.
I am not afraid of him, she laughed. There is only one man I have ever feared, and he is dead. The man looked at her curiously.
Well, let us hope that he will not come to life again, then, he remarked lightly.
What do you mean? Cried the dancer sharply. The Count looked slightly surprised.
I only meant that resurrection would be awkward for you, he explained. A foolish joke.
She gave a sigh of relief. Oh, no, he is dead all right. Killed in the war. He was a man who once loved me.
In South Africa? Asked the Count negligently.
Yes, since you ask it, in South Africa.
That is your native country, is it not?
She nodded. Her visitor rose and reached for his hat.
Well, he remarked, you know your own business best, but if I were you, I should fear the colonel far more than any disillusioned lover. He is a man whom it is particularly easy to underestimate.
She laughed scornfully. As if I did not know him after all these years.
I wonder if you do, he said softly. I very much wonder if you do.
Oh, I am not a fool, and I am not alone in this. The South African mailboat docks at Southampton tomorrow, and on board is a man who her is a man who has come specially from Africa at my request, and who has carried out certain orders of mine. The colonel will have not one of us to deal with, but two.
Is that wise?
It is necessary.
Are you sure of this man?
A rather peculiar smile played over the dancer's face. I am quite sure of him. He is inefficient, but perfectly trustworthy. She paused, and then added in an indifferent tone of voice, as a matter of fact, he happens to be my husband. That was the prologue from The Man in the Brown Suit by Agatha Christie. Okay. Struggling for breath control, struggling for more confidence when I'm reading the lines. I will give it a listen and see what my second attempt sounds like. But this is journal entry number 24 complete.